when we know a part of something, we have a tendency to think we know all of it. And the most important thing to do, though, is to find the factual known integers, to find some kind of scale, and then use that as your measure to determine your knowledge while you're learning. That way, you don't just get ahead of yourself and okay, it sounds like if the lower frequencies are like the negative ones, then higher frequencies would be the positive ones. So let's go get 40,000 frequencies and send it all into our body.
The following clip is exclusive content from the University. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Sevan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly, along with guides and regiments. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications.
This thing that happened recently as I began to research a bit more, and I mentioned this, so I'll do it in short script, but I researched a bit more about the effects of trauma on the brain. Like something bad happens to you, maybe as a child or in a specific situation with you and a person. You know, what happens when you're crying and bawling out or even physically hurt, or, you know, when you enter into a state, as my brother was mentioning, you enter into a state where you go into fight or flight mode, but you can neither fight nor flee. So psychologically, they say you then zone out. And when a person, like a child, maybe like, let's say you're getting heavy spankings or something like this, and you zoned out a lot, this creates certain scenarios inside of the brain, like neurologically. And of course, it doesn't have to be that extreme. Even, traumas that you can remember since day one, like one of my friends was telling me about how when she was young, like she was like going into junior high school, and then she had on like this training bra or whatever. And she was so afraid that day when coming to school, but then some guy, the kind of, junior high school kid he grabbed the back of her bra and he snapped her bra. Psh! Which I think is something that, I kind of think I remember that was something that Cass was doing when I was younger, but it's like, snapping and she said that it traumatized her so much because other kids were there, people were there. It was like the thing that she feared happening the most, and then it happened, that even to this day, she can always recall this. So it's stuff like that. Stuff that just kind of sticks out since you were a child, that's easy to recall and has been something very traumatic. I can think of something even right now. It's like that easy to think about. But what's really brought forth again is the change that happens to the amygdala and another part of the brain in relation to how the serotonin levels and the pathways of serotonin serotonin goes down and how much of it. So in doing a little bit more research, I basically come to see that trauma rewires the brain entirely after a while, especially if you keep experiencing it. And so this new entry, since we're done with, hey, keep walking around in circles until your legs get strong. My legs are super strong now. And now I'm getting that first introduction again of the instructions. So I'll give it to you. And it was for me to my higher self say, okay, but train your brain and your heart first. Like this next level that we're going on, because I'm already getting the ideas and I'm already benefiting and experiencing some of the things from the new level already. But just like when I was walking around that circle, how like I started thinking about the new things and the power, and it was still going through, and I ran out of the circle. I'm making sure this time that I don't forget the first instructions. Basically, before you blow up, train your heart to your brain. And I'm going to show you this. So, well, first of all, let's just go over a couple like applicable reasons why you would want to do this. And I'm just going to go through it and explain to you how to do it. And then probably in a month, I'm going to show you some even more advanced ways. But I do have something very basic today that is extremely effective. So it turns out that when you're trying to break habits, and habits could be that every time you think about somebody, you just can't help but to get pissed off. It's like no matter how much meditation or whatever, somebody talking about mumbo jumbo, when you think of that person, they gotta die. And that's just like, it just comes out of nowhere because the trauma and the craziness that happened between you and that person is like, I don't have to forgive this person. That's it. So we believe that, hey, it is what it is. I'm moving on my own way. But actually, that has everything to do with neuroplasticity. It has everything to do with the consciousness's ability to actually change that passageway. And I'm just going to give you one example from Ashkan's story that he told me, and then another example from me personally. But it's just in relation to, for him, after he went on the 10 days Vipassana, you get a whole entire correction with the field. You're on a whole different level. And, if you completely break through, because you're also meditating and doing everything in the sessions, you even will reach almost like a nirvana state. This then puts you immediately into super compassion. It's like you've just taken bags and bags of mushrooms. And in this super compassion, you don't really wish bad on anyone or bad things happen to anybody. You're not actually in that frequency anymore. It's actually more of like a compassion mixed with a sadness. So in my experience, it was exactly the same thing. That once the numbers and the letters started rolling and I was seeing how the matrix was designed as pretty much like a trap in that way, where if somebody didn't tell you exactly what was going on here, then you would almost be stuck. Or no, you would be stuck. Almost, you would be stuck. So when I went through that whole experience energetically, I no longer had that thing where I wanted to blame somebody for anything they did to me, because I realized if they were at program with this, if this had been done to them, they could even done worse. I actually realized that the programming and the betrayal was so crazy and so bad that anybody who had done bad things inside of it, you know what I mean? They could have even done worse because of the programming and how bad it is, if you get where I'm coming from. Meaning that the society has done so much programming and mind control and all this stuff on each citizen. The ones that you see that still have a heart or still are functioning, but they don't know nothing about what you know, these are like the real heroes, because they're deep in the trance, right? And the trance is real. So it also, as an adept though, like once you get some octaves above that, the last thing you're really doing is looking at them like, look at them, useless eaters. When are they ever going to wake up? They're doomed. Because you understand why they're in that. So it's, even when I speak of it from the religious level, like, yeah, religious people, many of them, you could just forget about it. Like, they're so rock solid in what they think they believe, it does forfeit you being able to actually save everyone in the world. If that was the program that you were running on, that's going to be facts. But I'm not saying that from a level like, just like a combative. It's more of like a compassionate sadness. Like, dang, that's crazy. You could actually get to them into the matrix, into a point where everything that you are can be offered to you and you wouldn't even accept it, right? So it's more in that vibe, in that frequency. And again, as I said, also just to make the Vipassana statement very clear, what I'm also saying is I then found high levels of awareness not to be something that was like being shouted from the rooftops and given to everybody, but more of something that you really had to seek. More of something that you needed to earn it. Do you get where I'm coming from? See what I mean? So just think about what I'm saying. I found higher levels of knowledge and awareness to be more of something that you needed to earn, more so than something that was just could be given to you freely. Right. So even that idea, I'm going to save everybody, it's kind of misfound, because it's like when they save themselves, like when they put themselves into the position to come into the awareness of who they are and to really respect that and then start leveling out and going through the process of the deprogramming, that's what we would be talking about then, right? And now if you could create applications, or you could, bring in more awareness, you could write stories, paintings, sing songs, whatever you can do to feel like you could speed up that process for our beloved, that's always welcome here. But still realize what we're talking about, right? So that just kind of levels the field. So in this awareness, just remember now from henceforth and what we're going forward into is also still an awareness that you're spending time aligning your brain and your heart, because in many ways you'll be able to go beyond what we call spirituality. You'll actually start realizing spirituality also is a subject or a topic to what we really are. And you can't even really explain what you can do and what you're capable of, but you need to do that first thing, synchronize your brain and your heart so you can get the real transmission. And I'm going to show you, since the title of this show was contacting or the higher self, or basically communication with the higher self, why this works, because it is the higher self, if you may, that holds this data. And I'm going to explain to you why the higher self is actually in another wavelength or frequency. So I got my pictures here loaded. So let me just kind of see my notes here. Okay, yeah, we're right here. So first of all, identifying what higher would mean, okay? Because the word higher self works better than lower self. Like if I said we're going to contact the lower self, I'm sure we'd lose half of the show here right now, right? Because somebody they got him. I knew it. No, Sevan. He was telling us to contact the lower self. But anyway, higher self sounds better is all I'm saying. However, it isn't necessarily accurate, because what we're really doing here, because this is the brain's problem. It happens to do that. Left, right, up, down. Let me kind of hit this real quick. 1 second. It does the left, right, up, down. You know, it's got two hemispheres for a reason. It is binary in that way, right? They say it's a binary star system. We got a twin. There's a lot that keeps connecting into this, but the duality thing is big because the brain is big on the duality thing. That's why it has two different sides. Like you could never say like there's more of a separation between things between these two in here. And we've talked about this, but just remember, as a brain, as a faculty, if you just walked in there with them, they would always be in that back and forth. The heart doesn't function like that. That's not even like it's on a whole nother level. It's like working in that way. It's like, yo, y'all talking, I'm working. You see what I mean? Give me 1 quick second here. I have something trying to crawl on me. So anyway, so when we say higher self, what we're talking about is we're talking about synchronizing. Okay? So we're talking about synchronizing with a specific wavelength of self. Okay, and we've kind of gone enough through wavelengths to kind of understand that. And that's our chart here. Let's just say that. Okay, so we're talking about the wavelength, electromagnetic spectrum. But more specifically, as we zoom in, we're more of talking about this. Okay, the wavelength. And how, when we're talking about higher self, we're talking about synchronization. And also what we're talking about is just as I was mentioning earlier, when the ancestors called the gods, because these are really the gods, when the ancestors called the gods, they called the gods specifically for what they needed or what they were experiencing. Okay? So in this way, and let me just clarify here, when we're saying synchronizing the heart and the brain, all we're saying is that you're synchronizing your heart, which is called HRV. And we talked about this a little bit, but we're going to dive deep today, or deep enough. But the heart rate variable. So this just means like, to in layman's terms, what range does your heart have? And like when you play your heart, can you go the complete range, or do you kind of like narrow into certain, and this would be, this is the heart rate in milliseconds. Okay. So I'm trying to make this in layman's terms. We don't want to go to medical school here today. What we're saying is that as the chart is indicating, as you get older, your heart rate can't go as high as when you were younger, or has a tendency not to go as high, right? Like either you're not working out anymore, or you just never had that kind of range anyway. What I'm telling you today is what the monks, the real ones, not the fake ones, are capable of doing is going up and down this 110, this is like you're in full sprint as an athlete. And this is why, like as a trained athlete, all of this next level of how to really enter into supra consciousness, the research was poured into the medical field in relation to sports because that's where all the money was. So all the research and all that from the third party guys that were not going to take just the regular medications and try to, because they couldn't get FDA approval, they then went into like sports medicine because sports medicine is a huge field, right? But these are the things that it's like the easiest things that you could learn to get the biggest results. Okay. So this was like, we need to take like the stuff that we know that works, that's not expensive, and then create our own stuff or our own metrics around it, and then start showing improvements in this field of sports medicine or anybody who needs to reach the Zen state. Anybody who could benefit from that. This could be like musicians. This could be high-end business owners. This could be, again, our top professional athletes. Now, when you look at that, high-end business owners, how many of them are there? Not a lot. So there's not a lot of money there. What other fields could benefit from this? When you start thinking about all the fields that can benefit from this, you find already anybody, it's literally separating who needs to be in it by the frequency wave itself. Those who can obtain higher levels of gamma are already peak performers and professionals in their field. And that by law of averages makes still them the least amount of people. So that means that they're not really the money bag. You see what I mean? So if somebody's going to develop in this field, the only area that there was money in was sports medicine because you got a lot of athletes all the way from the time even they hit high school, even junior high school. There's budgets around these kids so that they can be soccer players, and it's pretty much worldwide. So basically they found a market, and that's why all the research about entering Zen, the highest state of consciousness, peak, which for you, peak is like being at the tip of, okay, so let's say that you join your higher self at the peak. The peak is the meet me halfway of the higher self. It's like, yo, okay, yeah, we already in the future. I got something for you, but you got to meet me at the peak because there's absolutely no way I'm coming down into theta. Like I can't even hold theta. Remember, gamma is a whole nother realm. Nothing from beta can handle gamma really. Like nothing from theta, nothing from delta, all of that it gets basically radiated, what you would call radiation. It just gets disrupted. So it's a whole nother realm, whole different level of communication. So the overall goal always was to be able to increase the time a person can stay in any of these states on cue, to give them almost like a switch, go to delta, go to theta, go to gamma, that you will recognize not only just how to do it, like moving your finger. When you say, hey, move your middle finger on your right hand, okay, that's neurally mapped in your brain. You just do it so casually, but it's neurally mapped. So the only thing these techniques do is they let you neurally map gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta, generally by letting you experience what it's like to be in them. So you would get familiar with it. So then you can then bring it in on cue. In this, of course, simple research, feedback research was simply going to someone who had already seemed to achieve that state and then measuring them. So one of the gentlemen who was one of the first ones to measure the state coming from the monks came in with the EEG equipment, which is like all the electrodes on the head. The monks had agreed for him to come in and do his thing. Puts it on him. And all the monks are laughing. And then the guy, he's coming from one of the U.S. universities. He's like, man, what did I do? Is that like a faux pas? Did I do something in the culture everybody finds funny? And then the guy that spoke English said, no, it's just that you're hooking it up to the brain, but where we meditate from is from the heart. Okay, but not like the Western heart thing. It's like, oh, we met. Oh, okay. That means namaste. That means that they deeply centered into their heart and they love everyone. That. Okay. Sit down, Cindy. That's going to happen anyway. What we're talking about is they actually really meditate from the heart and use the heart as an indicator to where they're reaching in the meditation. Because why? And now I had pieced it all together because I had heard quite a bit about certain things that they were doing, but I had never been able to quantify how they were able to do it. Like, one, they have another door. Like, they get out of this reality for real and they go to a place that all of them are at. And I know this factually. And I could just not really figure out, though, how it was happening. But now I got it. First of all, the heart is the clock, not the one on the wall. The one on the wall is the as below version of the heart. Okay. And this is why time is so off, because time is not like a linear thing. In that way, it's like we can slow down time, we can speed up time. What they did was normalize it. And that's what this reality is like normalized time. Because for us, and if everybody around us, because I've been deep in this, by the way, I've been listening to a lot of different people and I know what to listen for. They're saying when groups of people get together and they sync HRV, which happens really fast, that's what all the gongs and the bells and all that and chants and stuff, that's what it's absolutely really supposed to do. And then when everybody gets synchronized, they warp that reality. They warp see, because it's like what they become is they become this field, this constant inside of another constant. But because the field that they're in, and we've discussed this before, is more absolute, it then reigns supreme. And the only thing that would mess something like that up is a person who doesn't believe. Somebody there that's not synchronized, somebody who's not doing the chanting, somebody who's not playing the instrument right. You see what I mean? Somebody who's not tuned in to the right state. And so, of course, that's not going to be the guy that they put in with the ones who've already achieved the state. And that's why you start seeing that there's like rings, as they call them, where it's like the longer you achieve the state, the higher you move on the rings. And this is why when I'm saying higher self, what I'm actually talking about is that there's a version of self, for lack of better terms, that's sitting in the gamma ring. And to receive a complete gamma transmission, you only need to synchronize your heart and your brain to gamma. And then there's a ton of research in one direction where many just went in trying to synchronize the brain with gamma. There's another group because the heart doesn't actually have like the same readout as the brain as far as frequencies and hertz. There's a synchronization that happens between the heart and the brain. That also is the Heart Math Institute, right? Because that was a lot of their research. And Dan Winter also did a lot of research on heart's ring and things of that nature, right? So we're just kind of adding to that body of knowledge also about making it more practical for people to understand of why you would want to synchronize your brain and your heart. And I didn't finish mentioning them earlier, but again, one is the easy ability to break habits and patterns. Because we come to find out that it's not like when you say, hey, I want to stop doing this, especially if it's something bad for you, it's not that you don't really want to stop doing it and that you can't. It's that your brain can't rewire those channels. And when you start using these abilities, your brain is rewiring all the channels all the time. So it's like a muscle. So then when something's not good for you anymore, it's easy for you to say, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. And this then becomes like a power of will, right? And this is why you see a lot of these people are very pronounced. Like when you around real monks and it's like the character of personality is really around them really heavy because they're just so pinged and crystal clear into the reality because they actually know what the reality is. They know what the reality feels like and they've trained themselves to stay in that state. versus allowing the mind to wander off into these other regions, especially at the wrong space and time. So the easiest way to see this is gamma you can consider as the sky, and delta you can consider as the deep ocean. And so obviously you enter into that deep sleep, things are moving slower. These are long waves. We talked about that here. Like when you start coming down on that wavelength, it's super long out there, long waves like the ocean. And then as you're coming more up to the surface and then you break the surface, I remember we were even saying that the surface is technically the visible field and spectrum. This was like the space between the shoreline, the small space between that the shore, when the tide comes in and pulls back, like that's like some kind of space of allotance, right? It'll pull all the way back to a certain point and it'll come all the way forward to a certain point, and that's its range. And those are generally the boundaries. This is the same thing. The visible spectrum, or the red shift, blue shift, or the red pill, blue pill, is the range of where it's like, hey, this is the middle ground where things from all types of frequencies, wavelengths form. They have some kind of presence here. They can move through here. But then if you wanted to go into, let's say, advanced intelligence from a certain level, because that's another thing, it starts becoming not as easier to talk about this stuff from a verbal level, like the higher one, the lower one, the smarter one, the dumber one. None of this happens not to apply after a while, because what you're really getting into is something that is unexplainable. Like, I just leave it at that. I'm not even going to try to explain that right now and trip myself up on that. Okay, so just remember that once you start entering into gamma, something totally different starts going on, and it begins with you being aware that you're actually everything. And then that awareness of everything leads somewhere, though. Okay. So let's just keep going with this and just kind of just putting some hard coded numbers around this. So we know gamma is 30 to 100 hertz. Okay. Now, automatically, I would just look at certain things. I wouldn't necessarily break them down, but I would just make a note. One, electricity is generally at 60 hertz. So it's kind of running smack dab in the center of our gamma wave field. And I would know from what I'm going to talk about later that would be highly disruptive anyway. You would have to make a personal note to basically be aware of where the lower end of gamma is, or around electronics especially, it would feel like you would have some form of ADHD. So this, again, is why meditation is important, because meditation gives you the heart rate variables to be able to move through these frequencies, or else a person is pretty much not able to move. They don't have that neuroplasticity. Remember, that neuroplasticity means different things for us. It means the ability to be able to shift in and out of frequencies. Heart rate variable means a different thing for us too, because it means when you're afraid or shocked or something happens sudden, you can control whether your heart goes up or down. This is what you need to understand about the monks. They can slow down time. They can speed it up. So if you jumped in front of them, rah, their heart rate may go in the opposite direction than what you expect it to. You see what I mean? So, because you got to expect that when you get into other frequencies and wavelengths and all that stuff, there's going to be all types of stuff going on. But you got to be able to remain constant, because when you move out of frequencies, you can't see it anymore. Or it's chaotic, or it doesn't appear as it really is. So this phasing into frequencies and staying there, as I discussed just recently, is key. It's not just knowing what the frequency sounds like. It's being able to stay in the state for a prolonged period to where the heart then synchronizes to the state. Or in this way, the heart and the brain can actually work forward. Like, hey, meet me halfway, meet me in the middle ground, and then you'll start feeling something. But I'm going to explain that in a moment. I want to get ahead of myself. So again, we know that breaking habits and patterns, easy, no problem. Reaching peak awareness and peak performance, this is what this is all about. This is what's got the most PR right now of what HRV training and brainwave synchronization, brain modulation. There's specific terms here. They're on my list. Let me just scroll down in a minute. this is the rewards, right? And then also exercising these other valuable muscles, right? There's a stack back here, literally. You know, they love to talk about the tech stack. We want to get you a tech stack. This is a tech stack. And each of these things, they need workout. They're not like, they can just sit there all day and do nothing. It doesn't work out for them. They need the oscillation. And it just so happens that even just the way this is wired, your ear is wired right into all of this. So it's almost like a TENS device for the body and your brain. By the way, I'm kind of going ahead of myself. Just for those who haven't seen, this is obviously the back of the brain, right? Superior brachium and all of this. These are parts of the brain. The pineal gland is in here. But we've made notice, of course, that there is almost like a face back here. And then the thing is now is that we're saying also, you know, from exhumed brains that this area has a tendency to be in the same condition as the person's body. If they're fat, this is fat. If they're skinny, if they're muscular, whatever. So basically your brain often is in the same condition as your body. Okay. And then that there's different muscles in here. And when you're not working them out, and this would just be going through the whole wavelength of the frequencies. This would just be oscillating through this properly, though. Not trying to deadlift delta waves from gamma. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, that's almost like sending the system into shock. And this is why then there's notations being made also about psychoactive substances and things like that, because some of them have a tendency to jar you through these frequencies. And that's not healthy for the consciousness. And let's explain. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but let me see. Perfect beta. Okay. So let's just talk also a little bit about these frequencies. Let's throw that back up for one more moment here. So we know that gamma is a zone to shoot for. It's the hardest to achieve. So for the master meditators, this is your realm. And as I said before, I'm going to be coming in with some stuff that's not only going to be able to measure this, but, you know, if you really wanted to show off to yourself, you know, I'm going to show off. You can go and see how long you can hold gamma and exactly what that makes you feel like and exactly what you tap into. I'm going to tell you this. This is what I did. The first thing that I did was I took those Dr. Monroe CDs, just the first ones, and I clipped all of the frequencies out of them. I just removed the voices and I clipped the long sets of frequencies. Actually, Destin did it. Destin's like, I know you ain't go. That was 66. It came out to 66 of them, right? So anyway, that was heavy duty work. I had to throw that off on him. That's always why you love to have people around. Just like, yo, I got something for you. Mighty, I have a job for you. So anyway, it just made sense to me since I'm always like I'm skeptical, by the way. So I'm always like, how do I know if those are the frequencies, right? So meaning when I'm trying to use like new devices or something like that or other people's software, I'm always like, I don't know. How do I know, right? But you need to find out though, because that be the reason why you may not have exact knowledge. Like when I hear a ringing in my ear at night, I should be able to tell you exactly what frequency that is. I already know that I got to be hitting 100 hertz because I hear that based on 12 hertz. Versus this one, like I'm listening to this now, this one sounds lower than the one that I hear in my mind sometimes when I'm laying there at night and it's just like, right? And it's not tinnitus, right? So I know, but I need to be able to know it like my cousin. 433 hertz. You know what I mean? Be on it like that. Like that's the guy, right? Like I know. And then when I moved down, I was like, okay, let's bring this down. Let's see how we can bring this down because you have the faculties there. You just need to know how to use them, right? Or why. This is really more of the why that you should use them, right? So because the how is not very difficult. You know, that's the beauty of this. So it's just understanding these different states. So 30 to 100 hertz, this is already like you are playing ping pong with Quan Dao Jin for the World Record Olympics. Like you don't even know where the ball going anymore. You don't have to know. You know what I mean? This is what we're talking about. So just imagine there's obviously not that's not a frequency that you need to be in all the time. Also, it's something that you need to be able to dial into at certain stages, peak performance. Okay. And then as we move from there, let's say just notable frequency ranges is actually right between alpha and beta. They call this, it's like a cat about to pounce. So if you want to know, because I always go like to the milk, like, okay, or actually to the meat in this case, like, so what is the most optimal that I could really achieve, right? So he's got neuroscientist information. I've been watching a bunch of videos. And then now I've just taken to dumping all this neurological data into my big LLM stack and then just letting it eat it. And then just asking questions just directly like, what am I trying to get to here? And it's like, okay, here's a specific point. 12.5 hertz sits right in between this beta and alpha wave. And when the mind has achieved that state, they actually call it the pouncing cat. And what they're saying is that this cat, if you observe him, he's about to really do his thing, right? And he's just, right? But when he gets ready to launch off, he knows this is the difference between dinner tonight. That's how a cat's brain is wired. It's like, no pouncy, no eaty. It's almost like, but still also remember, like, this meal, no eating could mean death of everybody. You know, you got to understand what happens in the wild range. Like, it's not like, especially these days, it's not like antelopes and stuff hanging around everywhere. And even everybody's fighting for their life in that way. So, if you're going to eat me today, it's going to be with honor, because I'm going to give you the run of your life and these horns. So I'm just saying everybody's at peak. Okay. And in that, this is also the same state of, and their use for it is like, everybody's gone dark and they're sneaking into the compound and the weapons of mass destructions that never exist are at the end, and they need to move through single room and do it cautiously and wipe out everybody. This is the same training. I did give you the whole frequency range there, but the training is you're in the craziest situation, but you are so composed. And we've also noticed that, of course, when we're trying to go into these meditations and we start getting a glimpse or a feel of our power, and then we jar out of that really quickly, like, what was that? This is how you train that, because this is exactly what's going on. And this is where it's happening in between those frequencies, right? Then alpha being the meditative state, theta being the dreaming and the intuition state, and then delta being the deep ocean, right? So let's just read through this. Gamma waves, these are the fastest with frequencies above 30 hertz. They're linked to high-level information processing, consciousness, and cognitive functioning, particularly during tasks that require concentration and mental acuity. Beta waves found in 13 to 30 hertz. Beta waves are present during our waking state, especially when we're focused on cognitive tasks and engaged with the outside world. They are related to active analytical thought and problem solving. And by the way, if you say collective consciousness, that is synonymous with beta. Okay? Beta is the frequency most of the human beings in the entire world inhabit. So that's why early in the morning, things are way more calmer, because they are generally in theta and delta. But as they come out of the ocean, right? Some make it to delta, a few make it to delta, right? Theta, right? And so they're literally coming out of the ocean. So when you're coming out of the sleep in the morning, you're coming from the ocean and you're really coming up to beta. Beta is, we got to go to work. Let's go to work today. And most people stay in that range, but you should just understand, like, beta is kind of like the most clouded frequency range. So that 13 to 30 in there is very cluttery in there. So the alpha waves, these waves are slower, ranging between 8 and 12. Alpha waves are dominant during relaxed states, such as during quietly flowing thoughts or some meditative states. They're associated with relaxation, creativity, and bridging the consciousness and the subconscious mind, right? So we hang out at 12.5 because we get a little dose of the beta to not fall asleep, right? Because this bridge of the alpha wave relaxation stage is You could easily tip into sleep. And then theta waves, this frequency range of 4 to 8 hertz, commonly found with drowsiness, light meditation in the early stages of sleep. They are connected with dreaming, intuition, and memory. Now you're entering sub and then delta, the slowest brain waves. The delta waves are frequencies at 4 hertz. They dominate during sleep, and they're associated with healing, regeneration, and the unconscious mind activities, okay? So this is why when you're dialing into something, so if it's time to relax, that's not like relax, like we about to turn this off. That's not 100 hertz. That's not 528 hertz. Okay? And this is another thing about now. I had somebody tell me that did everything with frequencies and was like a master. That's the guy that's the mathematical guy. He said the solfeggio frequencies were bullshit, that they were all numbers just really invented, and the guy put a patent on it and is still selling it. He said it bear witness to nothing that he had discovered within the wavelengths and frequencies. So this is just a notion and a notice that a lot of this stuff that people have created around frequencies, you may need to double check its accuracy, because 528 hertz is so high. If you can imagine, that's 5 times higher than gamma. Now, of course, there's octaves, but still the sheer oscillation is it's too much. It's like, what are you trying to do? Now, is the chakras on that frequency? I'm still investigating that, right? When light transforms, does it bring us into another wavelength? Then we get a pair at 528 hertz as a medium. I'm still investigating that, but it is up for investigation, because any of those frequencies, 733, what are we doing here? This is overkill. This is almost like you ask for the 5G thing, 6G thing, and the problems that you may think you have with that. You're like over radiating your body. You're heating up. You'd be like, because all this stuff, like if it was like water, okay, and you were to agitate this water at some of these frequency claims, this would just evaporate. So you can't imagine that somehow that frequency would be good for like relaxation. But I do find, and this is just something that I've done, I've come to learn that happens with us, and it's that when we know a part of something, we have a tendency to think we know all of it. And the most important thing to do, though, is to find the like factual known integers, to find some kind of scale, and then use that as your measure to determine your knowledge while you're learning. That way, you don't just get ahead of yourself and like, okay, it sounds like if the lower frequencies are like the negative ones, then the higher frequencies would be the positive ones. So let's go get 40,000 frequencies and send it all into our body. It's like, whoa, that's not how it works. Because it's not how it works. It's not as linear as that. It's not higher frequencies make you feel better, lower frequencies don't. That's not what we're talking about. So it's just remembering that numbers are arbitrative. Just because a number is higher doesn't mean it's better for you. It's all about what you're trying to do.